Well, 8 straight days of rain, y'all. It's roof shingles back there in that chair. That's how hard it's been raining. Guess we're going to be inside for today's video. Stick around. Well, as you can see outside, 8 straight days of rain, y'all. Welcome to the workshop. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite ways to catch them. Soft plastics. If you've ever walked into a tackle shop, or Bass Pro Shops, or a Cabela's, or a tackle warehouse, or even a Walmart, the selection of soft plastics can be downright overwhelming. What do you throw? When do you throw it? How do you present the bait? What conditions should I throw these baits? There's a lot of questions, and a lot of people are power fishermen, and they just don't plain like to slow down and fish like this. But when you have tough conditions, or when you want to catch some bigger fish, this is a great way to catch them when nothing else will work. So hey, while it's raining outside, this is a perfect time to get inside the workshop with me. Come along. We're going to talk about finesse baits, clear water, deep water, drop shots, presentation, stick baits, seasonal color, underwater action, changing your presentation, scent and design, what's in a color, is bigger better, and how do I afford all this? So these are some of my favorites. I'm going to show you why, and I'm going to tell you how to make it effective for you. Hey, I get it. One of the reasons that using soft plastics can be so overwhelming, so mystifying, so daunting is all of the choices that you have. When do I use these? What is that? Why is that smaller? That's really tiny. What can I possibly do with that? Should I screw the worm in? What does this do? What are these? There's a lot that you can do, but it's basically 3 common things. A Texas rig style with a wide gap hook and a bullet weight. A drop shot technique with a smaller hook or even a tinier hook and these types of weights. You could have a weighted hook where you actually screw a larger worm in. The reason this is important is when you're trying to go down a deep area, you're fishing off of a ledge, the weight is going to help get that soft plastic down a whole lot quicker. There's shaky heads. These are weedless wacky style. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with this particular style of fishing as long as you understand the basics. And we're going to cover all of this stuff today. Texas rig. How do you do it? So you're going to need your fishing line. You're also going to need a bullet weight. Now if this is the end of your fishing line that you want to tie a hook onto, for the purposes of this video we're going to be using a 3/0 extra wide gap worm hook. This is the end of your line. You want to take the tip of this, they call it bullet weights because it's shaped like a bullet, and you want to run that into the end of your line. And you just want to slide that up, get it out of the way. And it'll slide up your line a little ways, don't worry about that. And then you want to tie your hook in. Come through the back of the hook to the front of the hook, this being the front, this being the back. Bring it up, and then what I normally like to do, and this is a little bit thicker than I would be using as far as line, but for the video's sake, we're going to do that. I run my line in twice, and it ends up with a loop that looks just like that. Take that, one, 2, 3, 4. I usually go about 6, 7 times. And then you want to bring it right back through both. Bring it through both. Wet it and cinch it down. It's going to look like that. So you want to trim off any excess. There's a trick that you can use before you do this. if you're afraid of a knot slip, just take the end of this with the excess, tie a little granny knot in the bottom of this, just like that. It's a neat little trick. And then you have a little knot very close to the end. Snip off the excess. Slide that down like that. This is a Bass Pro Shops tournament grade ribbon tail, 10-inch, real good in the summer. You'll see I use red a lot. The reason that I like to use red is the fish just have a tendency to see it better. So you're going to bring the tip of the worm to the tip of the hook, and you're going to run it right down the middle. But then, when that starts to curve, don't pull it through anymore. So once you get this to the top where this is starting to curve around, you want to bring that out. And you want to spin it around. And you spin it around to keep the worm in a straight position. So, as you can see, now not only have we concealed all of the tie off, we've concealed the tip of the line as well. So everything's tucked neatly inside of here. All you can see is this line. Now, I rarely use red line. If I'm fishing in the bay, every once in a while. I like clean, clear fluorocarbon, 100%. If I'm finesse fishing, it's usually not going to be more than 8 or 10 pounds tops, unless I'm fishing really deep, and then maybe I'll go 14 or 17 pounds. Normally I have the fluorocarbon tied off to some braid. Braid has a lot less of a tendency to stretch, and if you're down deep, you want that quick hook set. You want to make sure you've got that fish. But I usually have at least a 6 or 7 foot leader on there, and that's just me. I like a little bit longer of a leader. It enables me to be able, if I need to snip some off or I break off, I have a whole lot more leader to go. Rarely do I break my leader, but when I do, I like a little bit of extra length on there. So, coming back to this, we now have that like that. I'm going to move this, and you can see how long it is. So I like to put my hand there, put my thumb there, to show me how long I need to bring this down. Tip of the hook, slide that through. Now you've got something that looks just like that. Now, you want to kind of skin hook this, because you want this to stay weedless. That's the whole idea of a Texas rig, is you want the weight on the bottom, you want to crawl along almost like a Carolina rig, and you also want to be able to come through and not hook your finger. So just put the end of the hook, the little tip, right through there. And now you have a Texas rig. And it's going to swim very well for you. It's great in grass. That's what your Texas rig looks like. Some people do this like they're flipping, and they'll put a little bobber stopper here to keep the weight and the worm attached to one another. I usually don't. It doesn't matter. I'm not in that heavy of a cover, and if I am, I'm probably not going to be fishing a Texas rig. The drop shot. Okay, so why do they call it a drop shot? Well, the main reason is the hook is not the thing at the end of your line, the weight is. So they're generally smaller hooks, smaller weights, and these are all 5-inch tapered worms. Gives you a little bit more of a finesse presentation. We're going to show you a couple of the ways that I like to hook my stuff up. Now, in the summertime, I'll trail anywhere from 1.5 feet all the way to 3 feet between the hook and the end of the line where the weight is. hangs a little bit differently. In the winter, I'll shorten the difference up. I'll use somewhere between 10 inches between the weight and the hook, and up to 18 at the very longest. Usually fish are in the thermocline in the winter. They're a little bit further down, they're more lethargic, they're not going to bite as quickly. So you want to hover the baits a little bit closer to the bottom. So how are we going to rig these up? Well, let me show you. Okay. This is a #1 owner hook. And this time, you're going to take the end of your line, you're going to turn that hook around, and you're going to bring it through. Now there's a couple of different ways to do this, but for me, I'll bring it through, and I'll bring it back through again. Unfortunately, because this is such thick line, because I wanted to be able to show you guys, I am hopeful that I'll be able to bring it through a second time, because that's what I normally do. So I'm bringing this back out, and you can see that getting closer to the loop. You have a hook and you have a loop. So I'm going to twist this twice, bring it through the bottom. And now I'm going to pull this up. Now a lot of people don't. I do. I also will tie it. Just like that. So now there's the end of the line down there. But when you pull this tight, you see how that hook stands. That hook's going to stand just like that. And you want it to do that. It almost looks like it's standing upside down, but once you have the weight of the worm on there, it's going to change. And it's going to almost go straight out. And the reason you want it straight out is because you have not just one piece of line there, but you have two pieces of line, because on this drop shot, the weight is at the bottom and the hook is further up your line. If you're just goof fishing, fun fishing, you can take this, tie it onto the bottom. Some people tie it loosely so that if they do get jammed in the bottom, they can pull it out and not lose their entire rig. We're just going to do a clinch knot. Run that through, bring it down. So you have that. So that's at the end. Further up. There's your hook. We're going to use this talking stick from Cactus Wren. Color is Snake Spit. It's one of my favorite colors for clear water. There's a couple of ways that you can do it. You can either bring it in, bring it right back out like that. Now that leaves more of the hook. The problem with this is this will get tangled up a little bit more frequently. What I normally do is I'll take the thick part of this bait and I'll bring just to the tip so that your bait looks just like that. So that's your basic setup. At the bottom of your line, you have your weight. Trail that up. You have your hook. And your hook, if you have it tied on correctly, is going to stand out. It's going to stand just like that. And that's so that when the fish takes that bait, it's not going to get messed up or fouled up with the line that's behind it. It's a great hook set. Now the other thing that you want to remember about the drop shot is that when you get that bite, you don't want to yank it hard. You just want to pull up continuously and reel in. And typically you're using a spinning rod for a drop shot, not a bait caster. So there you have it. So just remember, if you're using a smaller one, you want to nose hook that bait. Just bring it right up through the bottom so that just the tip of that hook is exposed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your drop shot. Stick baits. Now I'm telling y'all, and most fishermen will agree with me, stick baits are just a fun way to catch fish. Hot summer day, year round, doesn't matter. These things will catch fish when nothing else works. So there's a reason that Gary Yamamoto and these Senkos are hands down the ruler supreme of the stick bait world. He has figured out a way to combine scent, heavy load salt, these things sink to the bottom faster, and then the action when these things are going down, the way the bait is weighted will very closely mimic a worm as it's fallen to the bottom. Fish have a tendency to hold on to these things for a very long time, and some of the colors and two-tones, some of the laminates that he puts out, you can see all the glitter in these. This is my favorite, the PBJ. And then you've got this pumpkin watermelon red black flake. Both of these are outstanding baits. I've got orange that I use in clear water and almost like a clear in clean water. These are good in stained water, a little bit darker. This is a KVD Perfect Plastic Ocho. Ocho means 8. It's an 8-sided bait, and the cool thing about this, I'm sure you can see the movement, is that it's got sides to it. So the water displacement on this particular bait is going to be a whole lot different than, let's say, on these baits. So when this swims through the water, it puts off a little bit more of a vibration. These also have scent. They've got coffee scent in them. And for some reason, some fisherman somewhere must have dropped a worm in his cup of coffee in the morning and figured out that the fish really love that scent, because this hands down will catch fish too. Then we've got my Superstar. A little company out of Arizona. If y'all haven't heard of these folks, get online. It's cactusrenoutdoors.com. I am not sponsored by them. I believe in the baits so much I talk about them every single chance I get. So listen up. These baits come in 3 different sizes, a 4, a 5. This particular one is a 6-inch. Neat thing about these baits is salt inside and out. This is a Superstitious Skies. Check out this tail. Now I told you the company's out of Arizona. This mimics a rattlesnake tail, y'all. I don't care what you say. But when it falls through the water, or when it headstands on the bottom, because it's loaded top heavy, so these little guys, without the aid of a shaky head, will tail stand. And this is what it looks like to a fish. So real quick, and then we're going to move on. You've got shaky heads, you've got wacky rigs, and then you've got everything from a finesse. This is a number 1, not a 1/0. It's not quite that big. It's a number 1 hook. This is a regular worm hook, and this is an extra wide worm hook. So here's the deal with these. Most common way that I'll use, and this is just me, a stick bait is either a wacky rig, and you can put rings in this as well, but just for video's sake we're not going to put a ring in it. You want to hook it like that. It's loaded heavy top here, and this shimmy's going down. This little guard right here is going to keep you from getting as much grass and junk and snags as you would. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wacky rig. You can also Texas rig them, but I usually throw it weightless. So if I'm going to dock skip, 9 times out of 10 I am using a wide gap worm hook, just like that. Remember, put your thumb where the end of this hook falls naturally, and that's your entrance point. And if you do that every time, your worm is going to stay straight. It's not going to look crazy going through the water. and then just expose that, I can run my finger over that all day long, and I'm not going to get hooked. And that's what it looks like going through the water. And you can dock skip that. That loads the heaviest part at the top. You can also use it like a finesse. Even though it's a little bit bigger, you can run these in like this. But normally, if I have this type of hook and I'm fishing it, a lot of the times, if I know I'm not near structure or I'm not near heavy cover, I will run this worm up just about like that, and then my line will be right there. So I will bury the top of the line tie in this worm, and I'll fish it just like that. And that works. And that's a little bit better of a percentage of a hookup for me. Real quick, we're going to talk about seasonal colors. Spring and fall are very key when fish are in a feeding frenzy. In the spring, they're getting ready to go into a spawn, and the forage for them is younger. There's peeper frogs, there's darker baits. A lot of times over the winter and early spring, you're probably going to be in an impoundment that's taking a lot of water, snow, rain. It's going to be muddier. I usually fish darker baits in the spring than I do in the fall. In the fall, typically late summer, early fall, don't get as much rain. Shad are dying, and the reason that shad dying or fish dying at the end of the year is so important is that light colored or clear worms like this culprit right here, it's a T-Rex Jr. in Pro Blue, is going to mimic that dying fish. So these are real key. This is the 5-inch Sneaky Pete from Cactus Wren for the spring, and for the culprit in the fall, it's the 5-inch T-Rex in Pro Blue. Those are my two go-tos if I'm going to be fishing anything outside of the norm in the spring and the fall. Small. Changing up your presentation. When do you do it? If you're having a really tough bite day, nothing will work. Sometimes try a smaller presentation. Now, 9 times out of 10, throwing something real tiny like this little guy right here, you're going to get bit more. Problem with that is you have a tendency to get a lot of other types of fish that you might not be looking for. But just to up your quantity and your catch rate, you can use a number of different baits. Here's some of my go-tos. This is a Havoc bottom hopper. This does a great headstand as well. This is a culprit right here. Oh, let's see, what color is this? This is the green pumpkin, red and purple flake, gold flake. This is a Rains. Now the neat thing about this Rains bait right here, look at how ribbed that is. That is just hands down neat. That also will throw off a lot of different water displacements. I normally will drop shot stuff like this. Most of this is going to get drop shotted, except for this. I might Texas rig this on a tough bite day. Everything else here is designed for either a shaky head setup. These two right here would be great shaky heads. This robo worm, the hot tips, boy oh boy. Our pro staff guy just had a tournament up in Maryland, which is where I'm from, Black Hill Regional Park on Little Seneca Lake. Another guy up there, you probably know him through YouTube fishing vids, fishes this bait religiously. Normally I see him fish this robo worm without this chartreuse hot tip. However, this bait right here knocks the lights out of these bass. So these would be ideal on a tough bite day. You change up your presentation, go small, you will get bit more often. And last but certainly not least, we're going to talk about modification of your baits. Now this deals with taking a worm like that and turning it into something cool like that. Or like that. Really easy to do. Let's say you're out fishing and your buddy's got a bunch of tubes and they're working. You're catching smallmouth, but you don't have any and you don't want to use all of his, or he doesn't have enough. So this is a real simple way to turn something ordinary into something cool. Cut your bait in half. Now the cool thing about this is, let's say you've got a chewed up bait, you don't have a whole lot of time left, or you just want to cut a worm and make it look like a tube. So I'm using this Swiss Army knife. You can use braided scissors. You want to cut this worm and leave a little bit up here. So you have two equal halves. Now don't cut over top of it. Don't try and put it back together and cut like that, because you won't cut even. So you're going to take those two halves and lay it flat again and just find that middle. Cut right down the center again. So now you have a half, 3 pieces, and then you're going to take this last piece, do the same thing. So your end product is something that's going to more closely mimic like a tube or a crawfish. Really easy to do. You don't have to waste a brand new worm. If you have a chewed up piece of bait, something that you're not going to be using, don't throw it out. You can modify those baits. How do fish see? They see in color? They sure do. Do they see the way people see? No, they don't. The reason these colors sell more than most other colors is because it's what the fish is used to. This is a natural looking presentation to a fish underwater. Except for this guy. This morning dawn, maybe because it's a version of red, fish go crazy in clear water for that. It is more translucent, so that might have something to do with it. However, 9 times out of 10, a Bass Pro or Tackle Warehouse is going to sell reds, green pumpkins, like your browns and motor oil colors, faster than they will any other kind of oddball color. Purple seems to play into that as well. There is something about the flash and fleck, the way the fish sees these PBJs, the purple colors, the reds. And reds have a tendency to do better during the summer months than they do spring, late fall, winter. Fish love red. They love red in the summertime. So that's a little bit about your color choices. Now there's all kinds of colors out there. If you're in stained water, darker, 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 because you want the profile of that bait to stand out more than anything else about that bait. So something that's less translucent, it's got a solid color to it, darker color, that's what you're going to throw in a river or a dirty pond or something that's not Gen Clear. Gen Clear, you're going to go after your lighter baits. You're going to go after your green pumpkins, your see-throughs, your natural presentation baits. And if you don't have the Morning Dawn Robo Worm in your tackle box when you're fishing clear water, shame on you. So what's left? Well, how do we afford all this? How do I do it on my budget? If you're just starting out, you don't have a ton of money, the best thing that I can tell you is soft plastics, they are marketed to sell at a smaller price. But that being said, a $4 bag of bait sounds great until you realize that there's only 3 baits in the whole bag. So you're paying over $1 per bait. What I like to do is I'll find like the larger packs. Usually more is better. You get a better value if you get like a 6 or a 12 pack. Bass Pro Shops, Havocs, find items that are larger quantity for less price. Usually a bag of Havocs will have between 8 and 10 baits in them, and they'll go on average $2.99, $3.50. depending on where you go. Bass Pro, I think, has got some of the better prices on the Havocs. Culprit is pretty decent too, but try and stay away, if you're on a budget, stay away from baits that have 3 or 4 or 5 in the pack and they cost $4 or $5. That's a waste of money. Go after your bigger quantities, cheaper price. So that's basically my presentation for soft plastics. I did not cover a single creature bait in here, and there's a reason for that. This was strictly about worms. I wanted to keep it simple. There's enough that goes on with worms in itself. Clearly, we filled up a video with it. So if you guys have any questions, post them in the comments below. Make sure that you like this, and please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me today in the workshop. Jen Cravasi from Jekyll Baits. Have a fantastic weekend. TGIF, y'all.